Humanitarian crises, from wars to climate change, dominate today's global news discourse. Unfortunately, mainstream media often fails to address the broader human and structural impacts of global emergencies, at times reinforcing narratives that have negative, real-life implications for people living through crises and affecting responses to global emergencies. So what should journalists consider in order to provide more nuanced narratives when it comes to covering crises? Here are a few questions that can help guide that process. Who are the experts? Centering marginalized voices and amplifying the definition of a quote-unquote expert source beyond just government officials and data to include community leaders, grassroots emergency responses, civil society organizations, and other locally driven solutions can offer key context when it comes to understanding challenges, early responses, and urgent needs during a crisis.
I think CSOs are experts in this, in fields of crisis, because most of the time, they are the ones that bring the interventions. They are the ones that know, okay, these are the people responsible for this crisis. These are the authorities that are supposed to take care of this thing. This is how this crisis manifested over time. If mainstream media skips them, a lot of things can be missed. There are so many stories you can look at. You can get about hope, about resilience of people who survive crisis.
What has led to or contributed to the crisis? Addressing the impact of global systems of power and exploitation, such as corruption, colonialism, extractivism, systemic oppression, and discrimination, among other historic and contemporary issues affecting an impacted community, help paint a bigger picture of what may have led to a humanitarian emergency, what is exacerbating its effects, as well as address potential long-term repercussions.
Crises don't spring from nowhere. Even what might be called natural disasters, lots of times are exacerbated by what already exists on the ground, and what exists is a product of history. So it's really, really important for us, in order to understand how our crisis both develop and its core root causes, it's really important to look into the history of it. Without the history, you really cannot get a contextualized, a real comprehensive view and understanding of a crisis.
What gets covered and why? The criteria of traditional news values like proximity, timeliness, and human interest, and blindness to the way systems of power produce suffering, can lead to humanitarian stories in places perceived to be far away to go underreported, protracted crises ignored, or key information overlooked in favor of breaking news or what can capture the most engagement. And that has consequences.
If we say all crises, all lives have similar weight, doesn't matter that they're culturally similar to the audience or they are in a different location, etc., then the guides that we have had as news organizations of determining the newsworthiness of that would go away, would change. We would change whether it's ideas like proximity, whether it's, what bleeds leads, sorts of configurations. Those would change if we were to actually do humanitarian crisis justice. When we are covering humanitarian crisis, it's something that we have to keep in mind, that it's not always ever changing. And lots of these things that are going on have been going on for a very long time. Their roots are complex, and we have to figure out journalistic models that take that into account.
Who is telling the story? Large media corporations often send foreign correspondents to cover crises abroad for a short period of time. This practice, known as parachute journalism, can lead to episodic or spotty coverage of an emergency. Featuring or partnering with local media and journalists can help drive stories with deeper insights, highlighting underrepresented perspectives and challenges that might otherwise be overlooked.
In every context, local journalists play a vital role and crucial role in their countries because they live all their lives there, and they know the context, they know everything that's happening, they know the sources. They have this knowledge, this deep and local knowledge about what happened, what's happening, and maybe what's going to happen. It's so important just to talk to local people and to see what are their priorities, what are the things that they need to talk about. And here, there's an important point, if you are a foreign journalist coming to a crisis country or crisis place, it's not fair to talk to local journalists and take their knowledge without giving them any credit. And this is unfortunately happening in Syria.
Despite the impact of crisis coverage in journalism, its production remains risky, costly, and struggles for a foothold in an industry driven by profit and audience metrics.
Good sources of funding are key for independent coverage because, we are moving away from news that is largely influenced by investors and advertisers. Humanitarian journalism in particular is lacking support in an era of chasing clicks. So this is despite the fact that it is arguably covering the most important beat of all, which is like life and death. It is also one of the most expensive journalism to produce, due to issues around access and safety, the skill that is, required to do it very well.
So what can audiences do? If you're a news consumer, consider supporting the kind of crisis reporting that contributes to a nuanced understanding of an emergency, from its causes to who it impacts to its long-term effects. If you're a funder or donor, think about how you understand the quality and purpose of crisis reporting. What kind of impact do you seek to support? Follow us to read, hear, and watch more updates and reports from humanitarian crises around the world.